G'day ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Carnage House Productions, but not just any old regular Alex and Andy, Dougal and Alex. We've got something special today. We've got this day is just defined by this quote, I really do believe, where there are two great days in a person's life: the day we are born and the day we discover why. And if you are a Carnage House Productions listener, that second day is today. We've got all three of the gang members out here today. Do you see what's up?
Okay, yes, boys and girls, the band is back together. We have all three of the Cameron brothers here, and we're going to try and bring you something a bit new, a bit groovy, a bit hip. We're trying to, while retaining the entertainment portion of our podcast, we also want to try and branch out into some news and information. So today's going to be the first episode of The Wrap, and we're going to try and bring you one installment per week, and it's going to be uploaded at the same time each week. So watch out for that. If you want to be a regular listener instead of a spontaneous listener, we've got you covered. And so The Wrap is going to have a couple of different parts. Firstly, we're going to be talking a little bit about international affairs. Usually we'll choose maybe one story. We'll also have domestic affairs. So in this case, we're doing the Banking Royal Commission. Then at the end, we're going to have a few awards, some sports, maybe some pop culture if we feel it, maybe some of Kanye's tweets if he tweets out some fire. But the first hot topic of the week is US politics, and there's been some big developments there. There's a new firebrand in the house, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, 29-year-old girl from the Bronx, recently elected into the House. And she's proposed what is being called the Green New Deal. And essentially, what it is a national, social, industrial, and economic mobilization of the US economy on a scale not seen since World War II. And so why is it significant? Well, the reason why it's significant is because it's backed by a whole lot of high-ranking Democrats, including several presidential hopefuls. Among them are Kamala Harris, Kirsten Gillibrand, Bernie Sanders, and Cory Booker. While they've all voiced their support for it, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi has condescendingly said that the plan is enthusiastic, and I appreciate the enthusiasm. Now, let me give you a little outline of what the policy prescriptions are. So, a 10-year plan for decarbonising the American economy, overhauling the transportation system by replacing airplanes with high-speed trains, generating massive growth in clean manufacturing, replacement of every combustion engine vehicle, vacations for everybody, retirement security, abolition of, this is a real quote, farting cows, provide all people free university education, training, a good job, high-quality healthcare, affordable and safe housing, economic security. The list goes on. But the important caveat to that is economic security for anyone unable or unwilling to work. Further, there's spending money on basic science, alternative energy solutions, and mitigation infrastructure in the communities most likely to be affected by storms and tides and heat. She would achieve this through spending, regulations, and government ownership stakes. When asked how much this would cost, she replied, "At the end of the day, this is an investment in our economy that should grow our wealth as a nation. So the question isn't how we will pay for it, but what we will do with our new shared prosperity." Alex, what's your initial reactions to the Green New Deal?
Well, the first thing we should recognise that this is not the first New Deal proposed and enacted. We should remember that coming out of the Great Depression in the early 1930s, FDR implemented what was essentially the first New Deal, and what it was designed to do was to stimulate the economy in kind of a very Keynesian manner, whereby the government pumps the economy full of cash and full of gives it a whole bunch of jobs through public works, public infrastructure, that type of thing, to try and give the economy a kickstart. Now, Keynesianism has come under fire, arguably deservedly so, but it is essentially the same type of thing. So you increase social security, you increase welfare, you increase all types of public spending in order to, give the people who would otherwise be affected in situations where there is some kind of downturn, a kickstart. Now, that was the fundamental basis of the New Deal initially, but we see this is more of a redistributionist type of policy. My initial reaction is socialist policies like this. They often find it best not to talk about the numbers. So when she talks about the fact that it's not so much about what it's going to cost, but how fun it's going to be, that's not really a great surprise to me. Also have to remember that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, her appearances on TV when trying to explain the costings, she's used phrases such as back of the envelope, pie in the sky numbers, which aren't exactly encouraging for someone who values the value of their own assets. So what you have to remember is that when you're inflating the currency to pay for something like this, everyone's assets in terms of dollar value go down. So my initial reaction is it is way left of everything that we've previously seen. It has, I wouldn't say surprisingly, but it has gained a lot of traction, particularly among millennials. It's not surprising that it's being espoused by, I guess, someone who identifies as an ethnic minority, someone who has traditionally been part of the oppressed class. It feeds into this kind of class warfare, which they're trying to capitalise on. But I would be surprised if all of it gets through. That being said, it's still worrying.
I'd say also two things. Firstly, I am slightly sympathetic to Ocasio-Cortez in the sense that her first reaction to when people ask how much is it going to cost, she says, I don't think the government really cares that much about what things cost. We're happy to find $7 trillion for wars in the Middle East. We're happy to find $700 billion and then $716 billion in consecutive years for military funding. Establishment Republicans and establishment Democrats both passed that without any qualms. And so then she says, well, what about the average American where's the money that we can find for them? Because we can seem to find it so easily for all these other things. Now, but secondly, I'd also say that there's a whole lot of more in the centre liberals who are half-heartedly supporting it. They're supporting it in the sense that they appreciate that they're trying to fight climate change, but they are concerned about how empowering this is going to be for the GOP. So I'd like to read part of an article from the New York Times where the writer said, this blueprint manages to confirm every conservative critique of liberal environmental activism, every Republican suspicion of what global warming is really all about. The core conservative suspicion is that when liberals talk about the dire threat of global warming, they're actually seizing opportunistically on the issue to justify full socialism, the seizure of the economy's commanding heights in order to implement the most left-wing possible agenda. Yeah. So what you also find in the Green New Deal is not only environmental policy, but you find universal healthcare, free education, social safety nets, which are all wrapped up in the kind of climate change legislation. And this is not like an Alex Jones thing that people through climate change are trying to create a centralised government to control your assets and wealth. This seems to now be a mainstream thing.
Sure, you're exactly right. This is where the term watermelon comes from, is that refers to people who are green on the outside but totally and massively red on the inside. This is one of the reasons why I'm sceptical on climate change. There are a number of things you have to prove with climate change, but even if you did prove all of those things before you got to the point where you start talking about policy, when you start talking about policy and the instant remedy to all of this becomes some kind of redistribution of wealth, I immediately become skeptical. Any situation in which, so for instance, Ocasio-Cortez came out and said that the state of global warming is becoming so catastrophic that kind of within the next, I think it was 12 years, she said,
12 years,
we may not get out of it. Now, you often see that in cases like this where they're trying to implement really quite drastic measures. What you have to do is you have to establish a state of crisis and state of panic so severe that it warrants any kind of state intervention. So you can only really talk about redistributionist policies so severe like this when you establish a state of emergency. And that's effectively what they're doing. I am obviously skeptical, considering that on the website, when they were outlining the New Deal, they said they wanted to provide a safety net for those who are unwilling and unable to work. Now, anyone who looks at that, the red flags should start coming, and red.
Mm-hmm.
I think that kind of gives the game away almost.
Sure. I mean, providing a whole lot of money for those people unwilling to work is going to be a tough sell to, I think, most Americans. And just to wrap it up, I would take a couple more reactions to the Green New Deal. One from David Roberts of Vox, who admits that many of the policy prescriptions are, quote, eyebrow-raising doozies. And Ben Shapiro, who says the intellectual content is indistinguishable from the product of the cows she seeks to abolish.
Yeah.
So
that
there
is
we
in
go.
reference, I assume, to the methane-producing cows.
The methane-producing cows.
Now, that's also that's been brought up in Australia as well. That's not just an exclusively American suggestion. Australia has a lot of cows, a lot of cattle,
A lot of cattle and cows.
a lot of all of the above.
A lot of alliteration going on here.
I'm keen, before we wrap up, I'm always keen to hear what young Doss has to say. He's always got his finger on the pulse of all things youthful, and particularly when there's something so catastrophic. I mean, they're often talking about, well, you know, if we don't act on climate change, then what are you going to do for your kids and grandkids? Andy's got his finger on the pulse. Why don't you tell us about
Well, it does seem a lot like the classic South Park Al Gore, someone take me super cereal. We need to act now.
Yeah.
Seen it as well in Australian politics with like Tim Flannery, for example, in the past, where you sort of
Flannery gets a gig.
gets a gig for the first time in a hot minute. He's seriously jumped off a cliff. In regards to,
I haven't forgot what he looks like.
he's a weird looking dude, but
Steinberg, maybe you can pull that up.
Steinberg,
our producer Steinberg. So there's Stephen Crowder's got not gay, Jared. Then
Joe Rogan's got Jamie.
we've got Stein.
We've got Steinberg.
Steinberg, can you pull that up, please?
Steinberg, we're going to pull that up in the video. Make sure you take a note of that. Thanks, mate.
Yeah, well, it does just sort of seem like sort of just trying to create this panic and sort of fear mongering in the populace.
If the science, what the scientists or what many of the scientists are saying is true, then there is a good chance we should be worried about it.
Yeah. So like one of the probably for me the most compelling reasoning behind acting on climate change is that it's almost like a Pascal's wager type of scenario. Whereby Pascal's wager is a situation where if you're confronted with a choice in terms of following Christianity or not, and you drew up a kind of matrix, it's a payoff scenario.
Our recording has stopped, so you won't be getting the moving visuals of our good-looking mugs. You'll be getting a different picture as you listen to the rest of this podcast.
Might just put Stein up there, a little bit of Stein action.
You might put Tim Flannery up there.
Might put Flannery up there. But just to finish the point, if you do a kind of Pascal's wager situation where you say, well, what's the payoff for me following Christianity and it's true, that's pretty good, right? The payoff for following Christianity and it's not true is not amazing, but it's not awful. The payoff, however, for not following Christianity, and it is true, eternity in hell, is that bad that the rational position would be for you to become a Christian, right? Assuming that it's true. Now, of course, that means it is still essentially faith, and it's hard to determine whether or not someone can make a rational leap in faith at all. But that's kind of the proposition. For me, that's the most compelling argument for climate change, considering that I am still skeptical on the relationship between I guess the conflict of interest inherent between government funding, enlargement of the state, and science, particularly in a scenario where government funding is the primary source of income for a lot of scientists, as well as a peer review type of situation as well.
Sure. Well, I think it's very hard to make the case that you distrust scientists based on their revenue model when you'll only take one piece of their science and disagree with it, and then every other piece of science that they'll create, you'll probably trust it though.
Well, this isn't just a piece of science, though. This is a whole broad spectrum of alleged science.
Yeah, but so why would you distrust all of these scientists on one issue, but then trust them on other issues?
Well, but on the other issues, there hasn't been documented abuse of scientific protocol, and to the extent that this has been.
Okay. Okay, cool.
Rationalising positions here. We like that.
All right.
I think I would say you're probably less sceptical on the thing than I am overall, but
Look, it's healthy skepticism though. It's not Eddie Bravo skepticism.
I mean, you've talked before about a healthy skepticism of government. It is difficult to separate this climate science from climate government.
Sure. But I tend to trust people who know more about the issue than me on the issue, generally.
Sure, but I would also say that there's not a scientific consensus that you would chalk it up to as well.
Okay, great. I think that brings us to the end of segment 1.
Of the grilled chicken Caesar.
Of the wrap.
The wrap.
Now on to section 2, which will be led by our brilliant co-host, Alexander.
Dr. Zan.
Dr. Zan.
Dr. Xanax.
Do we want to just check on the recording, see if we can get it back up again?
Let me see.
Andy, why don't you go check on the recording and...
Synthesis,
Alex, did you just pause the audio or not?
No, I didn't.
Okay, well, why don't you bring us into the Banking Royal Commission?
Basically, there has arguably been not a hotter topic, particularly in finance culture, than what is now, well, I guess in a sense concluded, but not totally concluded. There's still ongoing processes and repercussions, but largely, I guess, the findings have been concluded. In terms of the Banking Royal Commission, it's everyone's hated the bankers. Everyone's hated the people who deal with money. Since you go back to the tax collectors in the Bible, you go back even further. I guess the Babylonians and those of that ilk. It is and did you know that it was often the case that prior to the Calvinists in Christianity, it was determined that it was the church wouldn't charge interest on a loan because they decided it was immoral to, I guess, you're generating money out of nothing in some respect. But that's beside the by. That's by the by. Steinberg's just checking something out in the background there.
So thanks for checking on that one, Stein. Thanks, mate.
Cool. So basically, what's happened over the past couple of years prior to the beginnings of the Royal Commission, just to give a little context, there was a series of scandals which kind of, upon their release, built up the public perception of there needs to be an investigation into this. To quote Jeff Tuvey, there's got to be an investigation into this, right? And that's kind of what everyone was like.
Except the Liberals.
Yes,
the Liberals were saying that there was no need for a Banking Royal Commission.
There's no need for a Banking Royal Commission. So what they found is, I guess, what everyone was expecting to find, which was a whole lot of dirty dealing, a whole lot of dip and twirl,
a whole lot of duck, dive, dip, duck and dodge.
A whole lot of that type of action, the 5 Ds of dodging the regulators.
But not as much criminal activity, I don't think, as they were expecting to find. There was a lot of immoral, unethical bid in it.
Well, what are you saying? Is anyone getting locked up?
There was more.
Is anyone getting put behind bars?
That question is still yet to be decided because they have to. What the legal question, okay, that they've got to answer, particularly with regards to something like fees for no service, is whether that is actually constitutes a criminal act. If it is, then I doubt people will go to jail. People don't tend to go to jail.
And these guys probably escaped these things. No one went to jail for 2008.
I think one guy did.
I don't know if they did.
Huge.
At the end of The Big Short, there was a thing about, I think one guy did.
Okay.
So, yeah.
One
guy.
guy.
He was a bit of a lowlife as well. He was
just an average Joe.
He was a bit of a can kicker, I think. And look, there's been mixed reactions to the findings of the Royal Commission. So the Royal Commission found exactly what everyone was expecting to find: a whole bunch of misconduct, a whole bunch of slippery, slimy bankers getting big fees for doing not a lot. So then, old mate Hainesy, Kenneth Haynes, has come out with a recommendation of 76 points, which is
a lot of points.
There's a lot of points.
Jared Hayne, the Hayne plane has taken off at 76 points.
Taken off, but they're going to find it difficult to get through to the airport because a lot of smoke, a lot of mirrors. So, of the report, Labor says that they're going to support and implement all the findings because, of course, it will be the opinion of the left that the banks are sticking up for these capitalist, greedy guys on the right, and particularly if the coalition has repeatedly slapped down the idea of the Royal Commission in the first place. They're going to be the ones to say, well, look, we told you it was going to be bad. You didn't want to have a look because all your mates are in the banks, and this is what happened, right? In terms of the penalties, there's been mixed reactions as well. So the way that you can often tell is how the market reacts to
where people put their money.
Where people put their money is
often a good place to
often
start.
a good indicator. So the ASX 200's financial sector on Tuesday was up about 5%, with analysts at Jefferies commenting, quote, "Is that it?" Question mark. Now, of the hardest hit is arguably the brokers. So if you're looking for a mortgage, you'll often go through a broker. Now, old mate Hainsey has absolutely come down on the brokers, even though there was no criminal misconduct performed by the brokers. The brokers were actually relatively good in terms of behaviour, as a lot of the banks, driven by that sales culture that we often talk about. So there was obviously an inquiry into sales culture, whatever that is, and performance culture at banks, whereby they're determined to be not looking after the customer, but looking after themselves, which is, I guess, by the by. So, of the recommendations, I thought we'd have a look at a couple of the highlights.
Cool.
A couple of the top 5 or something like that. So, the Twin Peaks, ASIC and APRA, they stay. And they're still doing their role.
What is it? Is it Australian Securities Investments
Commission and Australian and Prudential Regulatory Authority or something like that. A lot of acronyms get thrown around in this type of business.
A lot of jargon.
Which is often one of the reasons why
nobody understands
anything.
Absolutely ripped.
Yeah, so I mean, we've got...
they're just like filling up the word count to befuddle the teacher.
But they're not. They're making up their own lingo.
It's a whole lot of this.
A whole lot of that. So, Christopher Joyce writes in the AFR. This is one of the highest ranking opinion pieces in the AFR of the past couple of days. Right, the biggest winners from the Royal Commission are demonstrably, by a long way, the big banks. This is... and so when he talks about how Hainsey's slapping the brokers, what he means is if the Royal Commission has its way and or Labor comes to power, the commissions will disappear completely. So the commissions of the broker, particularly the 0.2% trailing commission, which is what they get over the lifetime of the investments, assuming that the consumer stays on that loan. Right, they get the same, but they also get a 0.6% upfront commission. Now, what Hainsey wants to do, so all these brokers have established business models straight on these lines. Okay, what Hainsey wants to do is he wants to say, no, it's going to be an upfront fee. Okay, so it doesn't depend on the size of the loan or the complexity of the loan or the rating or whatever. It's all it's an upfront fee to stop allegedly brokers trying to broker bigger loans that might be a little bit riskier, even though it's really the bank that's in charge of that. And that's important because the Commission has said that the report recommended no changes to the responsible lending laws. So that refers to the credit restrictions, so who gets what loan, who's eligible, who's not, that type of thing. And so what Christopher Joyce is saying is, well, in the situation where the brokers aren't getting these commissions, it's going to drastically reduce the bank and non-bank mortgage costs. So the cost of the bank themselves is going to go down. So that's going to make them more profitable, and they're going to get more direct business because they're not going to go through a broker. They'll just go straight to the bank. So he's saying that by far the brokers are the hardest hit, and the banks are actually even better off, and you can see that through the market. Look, there's a number of reasons, arguably, like you talk about libertarian and Austrian economics, about why banks might engage in bad behaviour, and I'll throw it to you guys. But I think one of the fundamental reasons why banks are behaving so badly is because the government's guaranteeing the debt. In the event where they fail, because they've given money to people who they shouldn't give money to, because they're charging fees to people they shouldn't charge fees to, whatever, it's because it's essentially riskless lending. They can get assets taken off the books, but if the government's guaranteeing the debt and that's ultimately the taxpayer footing the bill, then they just do what they want. They're cowboys. And so what it also means is that when they're so heavily regulated at the minute, it's so hard for anyone to set up their own bank that's competitive, because these guys are so big that even though the regulation almost makes them more profitable because there's just no competition.
Sure.
So I'll throw it to you guys.
In the same way the the drug cartels remain profitable because no one else can start up their own drug cartels because of how hard it is to evade the police. I mean, to smuggle drugs into a country is pretty hard and pretty expensive. So only the big boys can do it. And so I feel like that's probably the same with the banks. Not to say that they're like the drug cartels in terms of
morals and ethics,
being bad people, but to say that you can't have any smaller startup innovative companies because the arena is set up in such a way that only the big boys can play.
Well, they're determined to be so systematically important to the rest of the health of the economy that if they failed, the results would be so catastrophic that we just can't let it happen. Right? Which just means that these problems are just going to keep getting worse and worse and worse. And it's fairly apparent that the regulators have no control over it. Have no control over this type of stuff. ASIC and APRA have been around for a while. And this stuff's been going on underneath their nose. Andros, I'm going to throw it to you. What's your take on the whole Royal Commission?
Well, my take really in regards to the Hayne report is that obviously Kenneth is trying his best. He means well. He's had to go through sift through a whole lot of rocks to get the sand at the bottom. But I think there has to, rather than just openly accepting these regulations, the government structures, like the government parties need to look more into it rather than just blindly accepting it for what it is.
Maybe, but the truth is, it's very hard to trust the Liberal Party on anything to do with banking after their initial rejection of the call for a Royal Commission.
Well, one argument would be it's like, well, we know what we're going to find, and to be honest, they understand that the banks are too systematically important that you can't do anything really meaningful, and it's going to take a whole bunch of taxpayer money, and it's going to take.
Well, even just for the issue, for the sake of transparency.
For the optics, sure.
For the sake of transparency, they should have it, and maybe it could help lead to a solution if you can frame the problem correctly, instead of just having vague ideas about what's shady and what's not.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else to add?
It's kind of an unholy alliance, isn't it, between the government and the banks at this point, and it's extremely toxic because it's ultimately the taxpayer who's going to be the one who bears the cost.
So, any solutions? You're saying deregulation would be
I
your
would
solution?
I would say the first thing I would do if I was Prime Minister, I would say I would get the heads of the four big banks together, and I would say we are no longer going to guarantee your debt. The taxpayer is not going to underwrite your liabilities. If you guys stuff up, it's on you. You're each going to be personally accountable. We've had enough. We're also going to cut regulations so that we're going to make the place more competitive. I wouldn't go straight in and break up the big banks. They will break up on their own once they realise that they just can't go on like this.
When you say you keep them personally accountable, are you saying they'd be liable to would they go to jail if they muck up?
I would say the problem is there is criminal law related to breaches of liability and misdeeds at a corporate level. I would say we're going to make the intention that these are going to be followed through and not just kind of they're out there but it never really happens. You know, the kind of thing, oh well, they'll get slapped with 2 years but it'll only serve 6 months type of thing. That's not what's going to happen. We're going to throw the kitchen sink. That would be my
kitchen
reaction.
sink at them.
These damn dirty apes.
These damn dirty apes can get hit with a kitchen sink to the mouth.
And you can keep the change, you filthy animals.
That's right. So what do we got next? I'm feeling this could be
time for Andy to shine.
Could it?
Well, we've got... Oh, just to say, the carnage has already begun. Often, Ken Henry's gone, and his mate Andrew Thornburn, but both gone. And they're both quite deeply sorry. If that's any consolation.
Deeply sorry they got caught, maybe. Because I bet they'd be living it up on some yachts or something.
Yeah, but
in the words of Beyonce, you're just sorry because you got caught.
Queen Bee.
I think it's
definitely philosopher.
It's definitely a
It's what Michael Eric Dyson called her.
She is
Dyson.
really
Michael Eric Dyson.
Dyson.
Suck it up. That's what he said.
Dyson.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Yay of the day / shout outs. This is going to be one of our segments, I think.
Yeah.
I would like, personally, to give one this week to Elon Musk. And you might not think he would get a shout out on this podcast. By the way, some of the hosts have previously talked about climate change and renewable energies. But we're going to give him one anyway. Because this week he sent out a tweet reminding people that all of the patents he has for electric cars and Tesla are open for everybody around the world to use. So he's not really worried about his intellectual property. He's not really worried as much about making cash. He just wants to kind of make the world a better place. Now, he firmly believes in climate change, and he resigned as an economic advisor to Donald Trump after Trump pulled out of Paris Climate Accord. So this guy really believes in climate change. And he reminded everybody that the overarching purpose of Tesla Motors is to help expedite the move from a mine and burn hydrocarbon economy towards a solar electric economy. So what you find in this case is that he wants to stop the greenhouse emissions. He wants to stop global warming as he believes it. But he's not going to take your money. He's going to solve it through capitalism. He's going to solve it through consent. He's going to solve it through innovation. So he gets a shout out for this week. Andy.
I might just comment on that quickly. Tesla was also the beneficiary of an enormous government grant early. I think it was north of $500 million.
Sure, they did pay it back though, I'm pretty sure.
Sure, regardless, but it's not the role. I don't believe it's the role of the government to give out loans and to act as venture capitalists, just for the record. But
just want to get 2 cents in.
I'm just going to throw my 2 cents in. But also, let's remember, Tesla is also the most shorted stock on Wall Street as well. A lot of people think it's totally overpriced, based on the Elon factor. And no one would have a more vested interest in climate change than Elon Musk. But that being said, I'm also sympathetic to the argument that, what came first.
There's a lot of people making electric cars.
Sure.
China makes heaps of electric cars, and they would love to use all the stuff Elon invented for electric
I
cars.
almost guarantee that they had it anyway.
Yeah, well, because he released it.
I'm saying to you, there are plenty of electric cars out there. Tesla's just looks good.
Dude, Tesla's cars are fast as and super safe.
What about the autopilot, the guy who died? There's been about 5
How many
people
people
who
die?
died.
How many people die in normal cars? Like,
ridiculous
amounts.
Yeah, but this autopilot went off and hit a pedestrian.
Yeah, normal cars.
How many times do
I'm not saying that they're perfect. What I'm saying is that they're pretty safe as well.
Yeah, but not if you were that pedestrian and you got hit by a car on autopilot.
But how many pedestrians get killed? How many pedestrians get killed by drunk drivers? Imagine if you were drunk and you could just turn it on autopilot. How many?
It wouldn't have been any safer for that pedestrian.
Well, it would be a lot
It's
safer.
almost like the car on autopilot was drunk itself.
Well, how many people die all the time from normal diesel cars or petrol cars?
Sure, but then we got a human behind the wheel. You can blame the human. The car just decided it's going to take this guy out.
We're ranging into serious anecdotal evidence here. A whole lot of let's worry about this one incident.
The Royal Commissioner.
Here we go. Andos, the last bastion of reason and rationality.
Yeah, of course. When you two animals are out here just slinging whatever you want at each other.
I'm saying the IP's not going to be worth that much at this point. Just for the record, I'm going to caveat. I like it. I'm pro it, but I just don't think it. I think it's a bit of virtue signaling, if I'm honest.
Okay. Well, that just sounds like a climate change skeptic argument rather than a anything related to the shout out argument.
You filthy animal for doing your own research.
How can he be so in favour of climate, the stuff to do with climate change? He's launching rockets into the atmosphere.
Yeah, that's because he says we're already going to smash the Earth up, and we probably can't change it. So we have to work out. So we probably have to work out.
What's the point of buying electric cars?
So we probably have to work out how to go to Mars. Because if we can save it, we should.
It's just like a vegan who says, "I'm not gonna. You shouldn't eat animals, but just give me the steak.
I'll take the wagyu as well.
I'll take that shark fin soup, and I'll get it down me.
I'll take the dolphin." Anyway, that's by the by. Okay. I appreciate the shout out. I'm skeptical on it as per usual. And why don't you bring it home with it?
Are we doing sports?
Are we doing stop feeling?
Are we doing beta male of the week?
Stop feeling.
So I've had a
we've consulted each other. We've had a meeting, and we have decided that last week we gave a beta male of the week award. And for anyone who's confused about the guidelines of the beta male of the week award, after convening, we didn't want to make it gender exclusive.
Well, not that male actually means anything anymore, and it's something we're about to find out even more acutely. As we've all become aware and enlightened in the 21st century, by scientists no less, who have social scientists and actual scientists, as Dougal points out, who we should trust on everything. There is no such thing as gender, and if there is, there's more than 100. So, just to enlighten this, my nomination for the Beta Male of the Week award, / also the Stop Fooling award.
It's a classic Cameron idiomatic phrase.
It's an all-timer. The Stop Fooling.
Stop fooling. Keep your hands to
Because
yourself.
you've been fooling, and it's time to stop it.
It's time to cut it out. It's going to go to Kate Palmer.
Well, that's your nomination.
That's my nomination. I know where Andos's one is going.
So why don't you tell us about Kate Palmer and what she's done to deserve it?
Let me tell you a little bit.
How do you get a nomination on the Beta Male of the Week?
/
Can I tell you, got to do something pretty beta to get a nomination for Beta Male of the Week when you're not a male.
to let alone have a good chance of winning.
To even get in
as
the
well.
running. And I reckon this one's going to be pretty hard to beat. So Kate Palmer is the CEO of Australian Sports Commission. As you would expect, this is a totally taxpayer-run and funded operation. And so she wrote an article in sportsoz.gov.au in the Media Centre on 7th of February 2019 called "Let's Stop Calling It Women's Sport."
Why? Why's that?
Well, you're about to find out, mate.
You hold your horses, Dougal. We're getting there.
Getting keen.
It's time to rewrite. I'm going to quote directly because I don't want to get confused that I'm some kind of stitch-up artist. It's time to rewrite the language of Australian sport. We need to drop the unnecessary, divisive labels and erase the gender bias that has become accepted and ingrained. There is no longer a place for the subcategory known as women's sport. There is just sport. It belongs to all. It's what everyone plays. What has traditionally been divided into buckets should become mainstream. Everyone should feel welcome, worthy, and equal. And here is the kicker. This is what I want people at home to listen to.
It's the home run.
Given that no sport is gender inclusive, and I'm going to give this to Andy to try and think of one that is gender exclusive, a sport that is.
Gender exclusive.
Yeah, so only one. Why do we continue to call it, quote, women's sport? This is what I want everyone to listen to real close. Especially now that, as a society, we recognise that there are more than two genders. As a society, we recognise that there are more than two genders. So, I must have missed that meeting. I didn't realise that.
I got mine in the mail, mate.
I'm going to have to hit my mailman because I was not there at the meeting. I don't know if Dougal, you would have been in China for this, I assume.
Definitely
didn't get the memo.
no.
I didn't get the memo where we as a society came
Have you
together
not heard?
KRC.
Have you not heard?
and recognised that there are more than two genders. Now, there is obviously a legitimate debate as to whether we just stop any type of funding going to the Australian Sports Commission at all. And I think there are some legitimate arguments for that. But in terms of the specificity of this debate, I'm going to throw it to Dos, and I want Dos to break it down. And Dos, have you found a sport that's gender exclusive?
Just off the top of my head, I haven't. I mean, gender exclusive as in only so no female or no male is allowed to play the sport, or is it that they can't play it together on the same field or arena? What do you mean?
Only one gender plays it, can play it.
I'm struggling.
I would say 5-set tennis.
Test cricket.
I don't know if that comes under. I guess they're still playing tennis, but it is a difference.
it's a marathon there.
It was tossed around, the idea of 5-set tennis, and the female players didn't want it at Wimbledon particularly.
I mean, hot days out in the Australian summer.
Should we give that one to Kate Palmer? That there's no one we can think of.
Yeah, I think we give it to her. I think we do give a special mention to the other
To
nominee.
be fair, I'm open to the idea that we just call it sport. But I mean, to be fair, I don't know who doesn't just call it sport. I don't know who sits down and says, "Ooh, I can't wait to watch women's sport."
Yeah.
I mean, there are people who look forward to watching the women's rugby sevens, but they're like, "Ooh, I don't sit down and look forward to
That wasn't the case
rugby sevens."
when I was in.
I mean, for women's sport in general. I mean, we might say women's rugby sevens, and sometimes we say the men's rugby sevens.
well,
I think it's just caught up over names. But I think the big takeout from this one is that as a society we recognise there are more than two genders, and that's what we pay for. But in the same token, if she wants to take that position, she can't then say, well, women and men should get paid the same in tennis when one plays 3 sets, another plays 5.
Well, if we are to say that there are more than two genders, correct? Then let's just say we don't adhere to the biological constraints, right? Let's just say there's gender and sex become two different things, right? I think most people, well, apparently most people don't, but I think some people would say that gender and sex are pretty much the same thing, right? If you say that they're two separate categories and that there's more than two genders, then there's actually an infinite number of genders.
At least, I think 56 or something
Well, the thing
listed
is that
by the Ontario Human Rights Commission.
Well, the thing is, if you take it to its logical
pronouns.
conclusion,
some places
if gender
have
becomes a
triple
social
digits.
construct, then a social construct can have infinite variations. So, if we were to talk about gender bias, how do you quantify gender bias among an infinite number of variables?
I mean, that means I could be the.
It's hard.
I
Kate Palmer, we might.
Kate Palmer
Kate Palmer knows.
It means Dougal could be the world champion rhythmic ballet dancer for his chosen
what
gender.
I want to know, what I actually do want to know, is when we're going to see Brock Lesnar competing in women's MMA, in women's heavyweight MMA. That's what I want to see. Because there's no gender.
Well,
I'm also going to ask Andos this. Andos, can there be a gender pay gap if there is an infinite number of genders?
Well, I think the pay gap would then just return to a spectrum, really, where it's just you have the highest earning genders up one end, the lowest earning down the other.
But there's no ends because it's infinite, correct?
But I mean, there'd be more dominant and less dominant genders, I would assume.
Yeah, the cisgenders would be probably closer to the top, I reckon.
Yeah, I'd say the more niche genders, especially when we're
The out of vogue genders.
Especially it'd be funny watching furry sports. Furry sports.
I don't think that's a gender, Andy.
Well, they identify as furries. It happens. They have competitions for furries. It's sport. Why don't we get Stein to look it up?
Stein, can you pull that up? Dribbler. Oh, lucky we didn't get that on camera, I think.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Card's full.
It's good to get.
Card's full.
Anyways. Our video guys sucks.
Got no tears left to cry now.
Alright.
Let's wrap this up.
Are we happy with that as a Andos?
Did you have a nomination? For
Well, my nomination was just especially in light of the last Beta Male of the Week award. No, the first one actually. The first one which I collected, took home, put it in the trophy cabinet. Where Alex told me there's not a more powerful position you can have to express your views is when you have someone else who's opposing you and you have the open floor. Which Alex did have last night at a family function. And of course, one of the family members goes, "Oh, Donald Trump's this, that, whatever.
This, that, and the other.
This, that, and whatever the other may be." And Alex said, "Well, yeah, maybe he is, maybe he's not, but he's blah, blah, blah." And the point of the story is Alex completely folded from his views.
I would disagree. I didn't completely fold.
I think you did.
I wasn't even close to completely folding.
I think you didn't stand
up. And more often than not, the person who we're talking about said something in relation to Trump. I didn't say anything. She didn't ask me a question directly, and then Dukes or you go, "Oh, Alex, do you want to respond?"
I mean, it was directed.
It was
you
directed
did it. It
at
was
you.
directed
Okay.
at you. And you responded.
I
but
can
whatever.
be the judge then, and I'm going to give it to Kate Palmer.
I think by landslide.
Then what I'm also going to say is I'm going to open the floor to the audience, and we want your criticisms, both constructive and not constructive.
The less constructive, the better.
The less constructive, probably the better. About what you thought of the rap, what you thought of the segments in particular, what you'd like to see more of or less of, and any suggestions for topics you would like us to cover or segments you would like us to add in. Also, guests you would like us to have on. We love guests. We do have this new setup. I hope you can appreciate it. We're slowly moving our way up the technical hierarchy in terms of our podcast production. So what we've done this week, I don't know if you can see, we've got this USB adapter where we can fit 4 mics and then put it into one USB port. So we can have up to 4 people at this stage.
Seriously, high-tech developments we've got going on.
High-tech developments.
Thank you to JB Hi-Fi for organising that, by the way.
Well,
shout out to JB.
Yeah.
Hopefully he can get a sponsorship sometime.
JB's also, I'm going to say it, don't go to EB Games anymore.
You're going to go that far?
I mean...
I don't want to advocate a boycott, but I will say there's no point in my estimation.
I mean...
Steinberg agrees.
Unless you've really got some serious traction on your EB World Card or whatever it is, then maybe
might have
there's
some loyalty
a case,
points on your
some
EB World Card.
But really, that takes you some... That's a grind.
The only thing that, unless they're offering better prices for trade-ins, but they seem pretty skimp for cash.
Yeah, unless you're looking for some niche video game stuff.
Even then, JB's got a bigger range, I reckon.
Do you reckon?
Yeah, I think they do. I don't think EB's got them covered on any aspect.
But I'll tell you what grinds my gears is that
Why don't you move a bit closer to your mic?
Is that EB Games, which is kind of the Australian equivalent of GameStop, charges for the same game like $30-40 more, and don't tell me that's the exchange rate. Where the AAA games that come out in America are all released for $60. Maybe that's changed recently, but previously they were all released for $60. Yet the same game in Australia, it's $100-110 in EB Games. Now JB might have marked it down a little bit.
You can price match at EB. Little known fact, yeah, you're allowed to price match. If you go to them and say, I've got this...
You take a photo?
Take a photo. And almost always, from what I've heard, they don't even contest it.
Really?
Yeah, they don't even contest it. They know it's a racket.
Really?
They know it's a racket. You know when Trump came back from when he met the UN and he said they were all looking at me and they were all laughing because they knew they'd been getting away with it for so long. He said all these nations and I said, not anymore. And the colour just went from their face. You know when he said that? When he was giving that spiel? That's what EB Games is. EB Games is the UN and they're taking all this money. There's no reciprocal trade, but when you propose a deal to them, they got to take it. They have to.
They got to take it, or else they're failing EB Games.
They do seem to be
We're
losing traction.
J Brexit.
J Brexit. Hashtag
JB Rexit.
Yep. Serious shout out there to JB. Good on you.
JB's doing well. Good service. Normally a couple of weirdos. Well, I wouldn't say weirdos, but
really
odd types who are serving.
Just people who are passionate.
I think we can admit that.
There's people who are passionate about their games, their movies, whatever.
I like people with the funky hairdos. I like it.
I want to see more, not less. I'm just saying.
Then why are you calling them weirdos?
That
why
is
are you doing
rude.
that?
Do you want to have your first retraction?
I'm not going to retract it because I meant it with respect. And if anyone could hear the undertones in the voice, hopefully the mics pick it up. But I was sincere in that. I was appreciative of their service. I was just saying that they often had some interesting and unique characteristics about them.
Not usually the connotations you attach to weirdo, but whatever. We're
happy to look past it.
Gee whiz. We're descending into chaos here.
Have we got anything else? Oh, you know what we haven't done?
NBA
No,
trade.
we haven't done. We've got to wrap up the NBA trades because the deadline just happened.
Yeah, this is Andy's only job, so we're looking forward to seeing him have a crack at it.
This is preparation.
I'm excited. I want to talk some NBA. We were going to talk some UFC, but it totally undelivered today at UFC 234 with Israel Adesanya putting on a totally mediocre performance against Anderson Silva, a guy who he should have taken out if he's a fraction of the athlete he talks him up to be. Anderson Silva's like 43 years old. Adesanya's like 30, 29 or 28 or something. Like, give me a break. Take him out.
So what happened?
So it was a 3-round fight, kind of boring. Some parts were interesting. Adesanya won, unanimous decision.
Oh.
And such a shame. Whittaker got a hernia during the night, so he had to get that removed. Couldn't fight Gastelum, but
It would have taken Gaslam to the cleaners.
Oh, he'd have taken Gaslam to the cleaners.
Would have just polished him off and kicked him off further down the middle one.
Whipped cream on that little Mexican boy and eating him up for dessert.
Sort of a little quesadilla. Young Doss man, I'm looking forward to this because we were supposed to have a guest on to discuss the trade deadline, but unfortunately he was busy eating. So
Mark the
he will
Shark.
not be booked again.
Yeah, Mark the Shark. So Andos, run us through what happened, who did it happen to, who are the winners and losers. I think that's what the people want to hear. Winners and losers.
Okay.
So tell us, when was the deadline?
The deadline. Oh, gee whiz, you put me on the spot here. I think it would have been
A few days ago.
the 8th of February, maybe.
8th of February,
that would
give
be
or
my
take.
guess.
Give or take.
Basic research.
And here we're going to go through, I think, probably the 4 most significant trades. Coincidental that most of them happen in the East. The Eastern teams, especially at the top, were making some serious moves. So we'll start on that note with the 76ers and LA Clippers trade.
76ers made some big moves.
76ers really put it all on the line.
They're in a real win now mentality, that
They
organisation.
really are. And I mean, they're setting up a big 4 for hopefully years, because they're planning to sign all 4.
They're all
of them,
young.
But,
and apparently they got super rich ownership who are happy to splash some cash.
Oh yeah. So the Sixers acquired Tobias Harris, all-star snub in my opinion, should have been there.
Mm-hmm.
Boban Marjanovic, the heaviest and biggest player in the NBA. He's also a funny guy. We love Boban.
Bit of a defensive liability.
He is. He can't move. He's a funny dude though. And
that's all that matters.
Yeah, Bobby and Toby is what they're affectionately called. Not sure how I feel about that, but and also they acquired Mike Scott. Don't know who you are. But
you got a gig.
You got in there,
Mike
mate.
Scott, I think's a
small
I think
forward,
every now and then in
forward.
2K you get Mike Scott for about 30 seconds at the end of the third quarter.
Probably the end of the second.
End of the second and then the
when-
third.
yeah. But-
Andos, so do we want to talk about that? Or you haven't finished?
We haven't finished. The Clippers on the other
Hold
side.
up. Yeah, you can keep going.
They got Landry Shamet, Wilson Chandler,
Yeah.
and Mike Muscala, as well as 4 draft
Yeah,
picks.
it's the draft picks. And apparently,
Draft picks.
I think it's a 2021 Heat pick, which is the big one.
Yep. The
Unprotected, am I right?
Yeah, the 2020 first round pick from the Sixers. They've got the 2021 first round Miami pick, unprotected, I'm fairly certain. 2021 second round pick and 2023 second round pick as well. I don't actually put that much weight on the Miami pick as much as other people would.
Yeah.
I think
That's
the
what
Miami
people say made the trade, though.
the Heat organisation do not lose. Pat Riley, one of the best GMs in the business. Eric Spoelstra, very underrated coach. I think
He's been crap since LeBron left.
not really, not with the talent he's had. He's had
Whiteside.
Whiteside's gone down the drain. He had a good season, which they always make the playoffs. Dragic is all right. He's all right.
I think you're being harsh on the drag, Meister.
The drag,
I think Dragic sucks. He should not have been in the All-Star game last year.
Absolutely, Simmons should have been. That's accounting for Australian bias. It still should have been Simmons. But I think the 76ers, if the 76ers are able to even... Because I think there's a good chance Jimmy Butler leaves in the off-season. He's just a problem.
I don't think so. I like Butler a lot. And we also need to cover the fact that Sixers did trade for Butler. It was before the deadline, but they did acquire Butler during the season.
Yeah.
Who'd they dish? Covington and Saric to the Timberwolves.
I'm going to say it. I'm a big fan of Tobias Harris. Tobias Harris can ball. That guy's legit.
Stephen A.
Philly, the 76ers...
Bad brother.
76ers are now by far and away my favourite to come out of the East. Boston sucks at the minute. Super inconsistent. The Raptors would be the only ones that can contend, and we all know what the Raptors are like. Kyle Lowry is not a playoffs player.
Well, let me tell you, Kawhi's clutch. Kawhi's clutch as they come. Defensive stopper. He can ball with the best of them. But let me also give a shout out.
You reckon he can take down that 5-man starting lineup Philly's going to put out? That team is like almost like an all-star team.
You put Serge Ibaka in there.
Well,
who else they got? Didn't they?
They acquired
who
Mark.
else
They acquired Mark
They
Gasol.
acquired Marc Gasol.
Which
He's
is
a fringe all-star.
Dude, he hasn't been good for the past 2 years.
That's not true.
Who else they got? They got Danny Green, Cash,
Danny Green hasn't been good since the Spurs.
That was this year that he
and he's
got
cash
traded.
money.
He's gone.
He's
But
cash money.
You're overlooking Bucks. you overlooking the Greek freak.
You keep naming one player on the team who's a good player.
Okay,
Look at Bledsoe. Look at Bledsoe, Brogdon, Middleton. They got Brook Lopez who can shoot the ball. They also acquired Mirotic before the trade deadline. He's big. He is elite. He is a baller.
But I think we can discount the Bucks since they traded the GOAT, Thon Maker.
They did trade the GOAT.
They got no respect. It's disrespectful to the game. It's disrespectful to the Bucks. It's disrespectful to the NBA, to Adam Silver, to the owners, to the Players Association. The Bucks should be banned from trading for the next 5 years.
And give that man some damn minutes.
Give him some minutes. More importantly, give that man some damn walking around money.
Well, the Bucks have made two completely unethical, illegal trades, in my opinion. The first one was trading the god Delhi, sending him back to the Cavs. They did deal Delhi. Delhi got dealt. Delhi got dealt. And then the second one,
Delhi got dealt to arguably the worst team in the league.
Well, it's not arguable. They are the worst team.
Definitely the worst team in the league.
The Suns try to give them a run for their money, but
Suns try every year.
And the Knicks as well. They're all just tanking.
The Knicks gave the Raptors a decent run today.
Well, yeah, Dennis Smith put up.
DSJ and DeAndre Jordan.
But that's actually another trade that we were going to talk about. The DSJ trade. So wonderful segue.
This isn't. I think that trade was more important for the here and now. This trade we're going to talk about is more important for the future of the year, for the 5 year plan.
So what that seems is that the Mavs have traded away kind of three of their starting five.
Why don't you let Andos do the wrap?
Let me do the wrap. This is supposed to be my segment.
You do your segment.
Okay, so the Knicks, the Knicks sent away. So the Mavericks acquired Kristaps Porzingis, Courtney Lee, Tim Hardaway Jr. and Trey Burke.
Courtney Lee's always good on 2K.
He's a reliable on 2K. I like Tim Hardaway Jr. as well. I think he's a walking bucket.
Whatever that means.
The New York Knicks.
He's got nothing in him.
The New York Knicks. Let me say my gosh dang segment, mate. The New York Knicks acquired Dennis Smith Jr., DeAndre Jordan, Wesley Matthews, and 2 future first round picks. I think the Knicks win this trade.
Are you kidding?
I think the Knicks win this trade. I'm going to take the Max Kellerman approach.
Please don't. He knows nothing, that guy.
Max, how about
that guy said Tom Brady's done.
He did say Tom Brady. That's the worst call.
He also said
ever.
Conor McGregor wasn't going to land a punch against Floyd Mayweather.
Are you going to let me explain the rationale or what?
Well, there won't be much rationale if you're channeling Max Kellerman.
The rationale is that there's only ever been one player, I think, who is Kristaps' height, Kristaps' size, that has been consistently healthy. And I forgot who it was. I think he played for the Mavs. No, Dirk's like 7 foot. But Kristaps is 7'3". He's just had a seriously major injury. We don't know what the Kristaps coming back is going to be like. We could see a Gordon Hayward type of return where he's sort of okay. Also, there's no guarantee that Kristaps is going to stay healthy just because of his size. And because of that, I think that the Knicks, especially acquiring 2 future first round picks from the Mavs, which I think are going to be decent picks, I think the Knicks get up.
It is a gamble, but we also have to recognise that Kristaps probably won't be playing much this season. They'll probably keep him. I mean, they're not going to make the playoffs. They're a few. They're not above 500, and Kristaps going to take a while to come back. They dealt several of their starting 5. They're not going to make the playoffs. So what they should do is just bench Kristaps and just tank for Zion or RJ or Cam Reddish or who's that other guy who beat Duke single-handedly in the Hawaii tournament. That guy. They should just. I think they're doing it pretty smart because they're going to probably get a good pick this year.
They are going to get a good pick, but I don't think they're bad. They're definitely not bad enough.
The question is, what are their needs?
They're too close to 500 to be getting a bottom 3 pick, which is
but so many teams are just above or just below 500.
Not in the West. Yes, not in the East. The East, they've got 5 good teams, and then a bunch of hot trash.
What I'm also saying,
it was so bizarre to me that you can lose more games than you win and get a decent playoff spot in the East. It's disgusting.
You can get 6. Yeah. That's not a decent playoff.
Yeah,
especially they've got
6. You'll take that.
Yeah.
Out of 16.
Yeah, but also you've got 4 elite teams in the East. 1 really good team in Indiana.
Indiana's hot trash without Victor Oladipo.
I'll tell you, they're sustaining their record. They're going to be fine. They're not going to. They're not going to
They
make
got
it. They're
Sabonis
not going
and
to make
Miles
it.
Turner.
They're not going to make it past the first round.
Miles Turner's getting legit. He's starting to fulfill on his
He's
potential.
supposed to have been getting legit for a couple seasons.
But he has been
it's
getting
just-
legit now. Have you seen how many blocks and the people he's blocking?
He's been
Send him
high
back.
on the blocks list for like 3
Send
seasons.
him back.
It's not a huge deal to me that he's getting blocks. He should be getting blocks. But
Disrespect.
Don't disrespect my boy in the mask like that.
the Miles, look, he's a good player. I hope he does well. But right
What
now,
are you, cousins or something? Or
I'm a basketball. I'm a
were
basketball
you sitting down at the
analyst.
shops or something?
This is BS. This is serious BS. I've been my.
What else have you got, Andy?
What else
Okay,
you got?
I think
Okay,
the last.
but what do we think? What do we think are our future predictions for how the Knicks will go? Let's say they get a healthy Kristaps and a healthy Luka.
Do you mean the Mavs? Yeah.
The Maps.
The Maps? What's the ceiling for the Maps?
Those
We're talking
two,
chips.
I'm talking. Those two guys are. You can easily fill some real good pieces around those guys. Those guys, like Luka particularly. Luka is not a ball dominant guard in the sense that he's going to take 50 shots a game and kind of get some easy dump offs, assists. Like if you're moving and you can shoot the ball and you can
Moving and
play,
grooving.
if you're moving and grooving, Luka's going to find you. So I reckon it's going to become an attractive place. It's not going to be attractive in the same way that Boston's or the Lakers is attractive, but I reckon it could be of the second tier franchises. It could be close up.
And Luka, I think we need to face it. Luka Doncic is a transcendent player in the NBA.
End of his first season.
He's on track to be a top 5 player pretty soon.
I think within the next 2 seasons he'll be top 5.
My fundamental problem with it is your point guard in today's NBA cannot be the best player on your team. He can't. The depth of the NBA, the point guard position.
He
in
doesn't
the
play
NBA.
point guard.
What do you mean?
He doesn't play point guard.
Yes, he does.
No, he doesn't.
He's
Play
shooting guard, power forward.
He's 6'8". What are you talking about?
Mate, he's a point guard.
He's 6'8".
He's not
He
a point
dribbles
guard.
the ball. He handles the ball.
There's Dennis Smith Jr. just dribbling up. I'm not sure who they've got now. They might put. I don't know what other shot.
He's definitely-
They'll put Trey Burke or Tim
He's
Hardaway or
not on
something. I
my
don't know.
fantasy. Comes up as shooting guard, power forward.
You need to do your 2K research
Ben
before you come in
Simmons
here.
comes up as a power forward.
No, he doesn't.
No, he doesn't.
No, he doesn't.
He does.
The thing is, though, he doesn't.
Okay, let's have a look.
Okay.
Steinberg.
Well, the other.
You want to look that one up, mate?
What I will say though about Luka is that he's got a silky, unguardable step back,
Oh, that is so wet.
which is cash.
So wet. Filling
And,
it up.
he can be really clutch. He can be clutch.
No, he's not. It's not. He can be clutch.
Well,
he
he
is
has
clutch.
he has had
is
the
clutch.
chance to close out a few games. He didn't close out, but against
Bear in mind-
Houston, he did. He was
Bear in
really
mind
good.
that he single-handedly put Real Madrid on his back to win a EuroLeague championship at 18 years old.
Mm-hmm.
This kid is legit.
Joe Ingles did a similar thing, I think.
Joe,
If I remember correctly.
Joe Ingles.
I believe
look,
it was in the
there's no
second grade NBL.
there's no player that's ever going to reach Joe Ingles' level of transcendence. But if we're talking Joe
Except for
Ingles,
potentially Thon Maker.
potentially on, but if we're talking Joe Ingles-esque, Luka Doncic is your guy.
Yeah.
Okay, and I think we'll move on to our last trade now. I think we've wrapped up the Knicks Mavs saga.
By the way, Luka Doncic's not a power forward for Dougal. She said that was ridiculous.
He does play power forward sometimes.
He can play power forward. I mean,
You reckon
Whatever.
he plays more power forward or more point
It
guard?
doesn't matter what's
He
more.
plays
It matters
shooting
if
guard.
he does.
He plays shooting
guard.
Or what do you reckon he
We've
plays
covered
more?
this. Definitely not point guard.
I would
Out
say.
of point guard and power forward.
Yeah, he plays more
Either
power
one of
forward
the
than
four.
point guard.
Look, I think we can both address that you two are both equally as dumb as each other on the subject. Moving on to the last trade,
I know
which
you
I
ain't
think
talking about intelligence.
is the number 1 pick, Markel, sent off to Orlando for
Disgraceful.
Jonathan Simmons, a first-round pick via OKC, and a second-round pick.
Caveat, Jordan Steinberg's Orlando Magic.
Yeah, he says they're back in contention
Well,
now.
let me
with
say,
Markel.
Vucevic is legit at the Magic. He's legit. He's a top 5 center. Deserves to be an all-star. I give him a
Just
big
keep
clap
telling
on
his
the
top
back.
5 business around. You got
I
about 15
think-
players in each top 5 thing you mentioned.
I don't know with Vucevic.
Aaron Gordon's playing like hot trash. I don't know. He could be good. He's the highest paid player on their roster, but he's not making. He's not making
he
plays.
can. I mean, he can dunk it.
He's a good third option.
If you got him as a third option, you do it right. But the thing is, he's their second option at the moment. Vucevic can't shoot it. He
Vucevic
just
can jack a
he's
three.
a stat sheet.
Vucevic can shoot.
He's a stat sheet stuffer. is what he
Vucevic can
is.
shoot.
He's putting up meaningless stats.
Vucevic can
Meaningless
get triple
stats.
doubles.
In the East.
They
He's
won
playing at the bottom of the East.
They won by 20 today against the Bucks without Giannis. So when they versus scrub teams, Vucevic can be impactful. But I think if you put Joel Embiid on him, or if you put even Al Horford on him, or another one of these
I
elites,
guarantee you, Al Horford would be Vucevic's girlfriend by the end of 48 minutes.
Yeah.
I don't think so. I
Al
think
Horford
you have
is
the
So he did shut down Joel Embiid.
He made him. If you put maybe third in contention for GOAT Aaron Baines on him, Aaron Baines neutralised Joel Embiid last year.
I would also contend Aaron Baines is also in the running for the most posters of all time in the NBA.
Yeah, not a great look. He puts his body on the line. That's what you need from a good.
He's
GOAT
hanging in
player.
more kids' bedrooms than any other player in the league. Except he's just getting dunked on.
Getting dunked on, getting absolutely yacked on every time. He's 6'10", not very athletic.
Bainesy bring the Bainesy.
Andy, so what do you think about the trade? Who wins?
Look, I think the Sixers win. I don't like. I'm.
Don't like Fultzy.
Well, I think I'm off the Fultz train. I think usually I think you got to give it about 3 years before you actually really
You call a bust a bust.
call a bust a bust, but it's not looking great for him, is it?
I think Scottie Pippen called him the biggest bust in NBA history.
Stephen A said he's on the verge. He's on the verge.
Stephen A is known for his outlandish statements, I will say that.
Yeah.
But to put someone above Kwame Brown, they got to be pretty hot trash.
I mean, Kwame was seriously hot trash.
Couldn't
but,
handle the ball.
I mean, at least Kwame played some games.
Stephen A. Smith said this.
Fultz did get a triple-double. Youngest person to get a triple-double, I think.
Yeah, but who was it against? I guarantee it was against a crap team.
Well, why don't you do your research?
I will do that now.
Do you have any comments on the... what do you think now of the Sixers starting five?
Me?
Yeah.
I'm going to say I think they can even push the Warriors.
Oh, so they saying... So who's this guy? Jonathan Isaac, or... That they got?
Tobias Harris.
No, the guy for Fultz.
Jonathan Simmons.
Jonathan Simmons. He's... Is he going to be on the bench?
Yeah, he'll be on the bench.
Was that the
Was
guy
guy who's playing at the Spurs?
He was.
They're going to put Redick
Dude,
in the
he was
starters?
balling when he was at the Spurs.
Well, I mean,
he was
in that
playing well.
Popovich system, it's pretty easy to ball. But
Popovich
yeah,
is hot trash.
he's also Jonathan Simmons has also got some.
I think
ups.
Popovich...
Yeah, he's got some bounce. I remember he
Ups.
was putting people on the backboard when he was playing
some
at the Spurs.
serious backboard pins.
Now,
That's what the Spurs need. The Sixers need.
A little bit of
A
defensive hustle.
yeah, but especially on the perimeter.
Yeah, I know, especially if you got because JJ Redick's not an amazing defender.
He's not.
He
It's Steinberg's favourite player.
He can shoot the absolute. He can shoot the
daylights.
It was the one-man Magic franchise for about 10 years.
I mean,
JJ Redick.
Oh,
Arguably better than Shaquille O'Neal.
definitely's got Dwight's number, I would say.
You know who else got Dwight's number? Kelly Oubre, apparently.
We're going to go there?
Let's do it. And
Go ahead. You go ahead, Alex. Go ahead.
all I'm going to say is that
Why don't you going to introduce it, or are you just going to...
You're just going to
Just
throw
gonna
out
drop
these
comments.
obscene
I'm going to drop
references.
comments because I don't. It'll descend quite quickly into madness.
It's the Dwight.
You want to talk about Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness? Well,
Dwight's thing was proven fake though.
Are you sure?
Yeah, because the same lady, did the same thing to Playboy Cardi, and so
Maybe celebs are just into it, though. Maybe Dwight really
I've
is a
heard-
7-foot bottom.
my goodness.
I have heard of weirder things that celebrities doing.
I mean, celebrities.
Oubre is a pretty boy. I rate Oubre. He can
You
ball.
know who?
Sixth man of the year for me.
Oubre sons.
Have you guys seen Blueface? Blueface Bleed'em? There's this new rapper who looks exactly like Kelly Oubre. He just gets clout because he's a pretty boy, but he's also a gangster.
Is he?
Blueface Bleed'em. He's got a couple of the boys really like Blueface. Maybe in a weird way, but we don't know.
What do you mean weird?
Maybe in a not traditional way.
Okay.
Andy.
Oh, he's not as pretty as Kelly Oubre.
Kelly Oubre's a very pretty boy. You gonna check that out, Steinberg?
I'm not surprised Andy and his mates like this guy. If everyone looks up Blueface Bleed on Google Images, you'll see what type of operator Andy's rolling with.
I didn't say.
He is. A smooth
I
operator.
don't listen to him.
It's a smooth caramel.
A rich mahogany.
Does that wrap us up? I think we're crawling to the finish line here.
I think we
I mean,
did our wrap up about 25 minutes ago.
Yeah, so...
who are we shouting out?
Oh, goddamn.
We were supposed to do this at the top of the show, and we didn't quite do it.
Also, let me do a quick shout out. We got a cool...
oh, yeah.
we did get a cool DM from... on Instagram. Feel free to DM us on Instagram.
Slip and slide right into our DMs.
We got a link to alienworldmystery.com, revealing all the secrets and mysteries of extraterrestrials and their existence on Earth. They just get a shout out for sliding into our DMs today.
We need more people sliding
Also,
into
feel
our
free to
DMs.
send us in your best memes. We tend to post about one meme a day on our Instagram.
We're going to post our meme of the week.
We will give you
the
credit
actual
for it.
page.
So send us in your best meme. Can be political, can also be cultural, just funny in general.
Yeah. But it's any comments really about what you want to see, what you like, what you don't like. Give me some ideas, you know.
A little bit of that.
Little
Sometimes I may be good, and sometimes I may be shit.
Okay.
Whatever, mate.
I think that's what the Italians say.
And you are losing it, mate.
You have lost. You've cracked it. Okay, so we're going to finish that up now. If you're still with us at this point, we absolutely love you. And
are we plugging My Style Suits or what?
we're going to have to
the
plug
loyal
My Style
sponsors.
Suits.
They're hanging with us to the end here.
Okay,
and we're
My Style
dribbling
Suits
on.
is sponsoring this podcast. Now I'm back. The business is booming. Make sure to pick up your suits from My Style. You'll be seeing us around a lot. Anything else?
Any shout outs? Don't think
I
so.
want to shout out to Tobias Harris. I'm looking forward to seeing him balling
Shout
at
out,
the Sixers.
shout out Toby and Bobby, the classic power duo.
Also, shout out to the Furphy gang, as Andy likes to
the
call them.
furries.
The furry gangs.
Don't know if that'll be included in. We'll have to see.
We'll have to check the TMO third umpire on this one.
I don't know why you brought him up, big boy.
Yeah, I'd brought him
Alright.
up. Whatever.
Thank you, boys and girls. We are out of here.
We are out of here.
See you next time.